Welcome back. You're watching Big Deal, and we are discussing the Deal Street view with the top team, iBanking team of Nomura. Now, Jwalant, we were discussing the whole tech space. Now, private equity and VC have a very big role to play in our growth capital in the last few years. How is the outside view on India right now, and what are the important themes that they are more attracted towards?
So in tech, media, telecom, India, at least when it comes to Asia Pacific, has become, for the first time, frankly, in recent memory, the highest priority market. I mean, no prizes for guessing which one was the highest priority market. Has always been China.
Yes.
We have had our set of issues in China, which I think we're working through. And it still remains one of the most critical tech markets in the world, along with the US. But India has emerged as an interesting market in this environment, and so has Japan, actually.
Yes.
So you have this very interesting dynamic at play where you have sort of China plus play in the technology, media, and telecom sectors. Particularly in the verticals that are of most interest, which are relevant to India. Look, IT services still remains very exciting. Healthcare IT is going to be very interesting. You know, even some companies which are driving captive growth are becoming more and more relevant. The second space is software as a service. I personally believe that software companies out of India would be almost the next wave of IT services companies. They'll be so large, and there'll be global software companies emerging from this country of relevance. And third, I would say to some extent, will be the tech-enabled financial services, mainly because India has built out this incredible digital infrastructure, which is effectively relatively free to use, right? UPI and so on and so forth.
And we are far ahead of many developed economies when it comes to fintech.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I have one question on fintech. It was almost like a quasi-consumption story from which fintech really had benefited. But then it came in the realm of various regulations which they didn't anticipate. So now they're struggling with that. They pretty much thought that this bull run is going to continue unabated with very little regulation, which actually came to a standstill. So when we talk about fintech, there are two separate ones. Ones that enable, and the others are credit-giving fintechs. How are you seeing this, and what is the interest level on the credit-providing fintech?
So look, I think digital tools to underwrite risk are real, and they can really accelerate the amount of underwriting. They can manage credit risk better, right? And we've seen that around the world. India is no different. Absolutely needs to be regulated. But look, I also want to take inputs from one of the best fig bankers I know in the country, right? So Amit, maybe you can chime in here, because I think this is a very relevant question between both our universes.
Yes,
really.
What do you think?
No, I think clearly, you know, and it's now being seen as a digital lending sort of a business. I think you have to give credit to some of these, let's say, mid-sized platforms. They've gone through COVID. They've gone through certain fairly complex environment that people were facing, and they've come out pretty good.
Yes.
So we know the NPA ratios for some of these platforms. It's pretty sensible.
Yes.
So I think you have to give credit to the fact that data analytics is helping in better underwriting.
Yes.
That was happening for the larger banks earlier, and now it's happening for the mid-sized platforms.
Yes.
So it's here for real.
Yes.
It's here to stay.
Yes.
And I think the initial apprehensions that probably all of us had, I think has to be relooked.
And Amit, I've always known you as a financial services expert. And deal making has been really hectic on this particular space, and also the investor interest in this space in all the pockets of financial services has been very high. How do you see it going forward, and what are the trends picking up?
So let's separate the two. Pure capital market part of it, and let's call it the private side of it. I think on the capital markets, we're going to see a phenomenal run over the next 12, 18 months, and probably beyond.
Yes.
It's probably a run which a lot of bankers in this country haven't seen in the last decade. So we're in for a very strong environment for financials for all the right reasons.
Yes.
Great growth environment, great balance sheets, growth is coming back, people are digitally enabled. So it's going to be a very good run, and capital markets are clearly showing it.
Yeah, also banks are an investment, quasi-investment for the economy.
It's playing for the economy,
Yes, yes.
So I think that's quite very obvious, and I think you're seeing companies raising capital, banks have started coming to the market, and you'll see a lot more.
And there's huge demand.
And there'll be demand.
Yes.
And this is demand both from Indian institutional investors and definitely FIs as well for the larger franchises. Coming to the M&A environment, it's again buoyant. There is reasonably good level of interest.
Yes.
And I'll pick two trends there in general, not for financial, but even otherwise. Historically, for the last 7-8 years in this country, private equity was probably the sole buyers of assets.
Yes.
And that's changing.
Yes.
And Nisha, we've spoken about this in the past.
Yes.
The Indian corporate sector has become meaningful participant in M&A transactions across sectors. And these are not just small-sized deals. These are pretty sizable transactions which Indian corporates are aggressively pursuing.
Yes.
That's a big change. The second thing which we think is happening, and it will take a little bit more time, is the international strategics, which are stepping in, and this can be meaningful size transactions. So I think it's really three segments of the market. The capital markets are on a roll.
Yes.
The Indian corporates are stepping up, even the mid-sized corporates.
Yes, and lots of consolidation in various segments. Yes.
And let me give you an example of a recent transaction which we saw part of it. Sheela acquired Kurlon, the mattress company, Sheela Foams. We raised a QIP for them just last week.
Yes.
Very successful. So capital markets giving them capital for an acquisition which was to be done. That's kind of a relatively new trend in that sense.
Oh, yes. So the strategic interest and M&A in strategic companies, that's something that has been in the waiting, now beginning to pick up. And that's one big trend that is picking up. According to the themes now, Jwalant, give us an overview of what's happening overseas, which is yet to come to India or just about beginning to come. What are the trends that you're likely to see in the TMT, digital, and I am a firm believer that media is going to be a big quasi-consumption story like Fintech was. So what's your view? What's coming up next as a trend? We have just last 2 minutes.
So look, I think from the next trend, I think we spoke a bit about AI, but frankly speaking, let's pick, India is going through three big changes, right? Young population, digitally enabled, per capita growing. So consumer internet, which right now is not very exciting for anybody for what has happened. I personally think in next 18, 24 months, all the new generation consumer internet businesses, gaming, entertainment, esports, will all come to India. We brought Sony into an esports company in India earlier this year, right? So we are going to see a lot more investments from multinational global players also, as well as large domestic players across those verticals.
All right. So both of you, and being sector agnostic here, one from tech, one from many other sectors, that more multinationals, strategics are going to make way into India, and that is going to spur another wave of M&A and transactions.
That's the next wave to watch.
Very interesting discussion, both of you, Jwalant and Amit. Thanks so much for coming over to our studio and having this interesting conversation and giving us so many takeaways on the deals reel going forward. Thank you so much. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Big Deal. Thanks so much for tuning in.
प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी ने